Thanks for joining us. It's the final push to the finish line in the Ontario election. Party leaders out on the campaign trail hoping to woo voters. A number of rallies also popping up right across the province. People hoping to push housing, education, and more into the spotlight. With a big smile, the leader of the Ontario Liberals casts her ballot at an advanced polling station in Mississauga. It's the final weekend to vote early.
This is one of the few elections where I think I had my mind made up ahead of time. Not always the case, but today it was.
I think the current government has had 7 years to fix a lot of problems in this province and hasn't managed to fix any of them. So I think it's time for a change.
And I want safety and security to be improved because I've never seen Canada look so bad, in provincially or federally.
The taxes are going higher and higher.
Those issues top of mind for these early voters. On the campaign trail,
Donald Trump's tariffs would devastate our economy.
PC leader Doug Ford in Thunder Bay, sticking close to message.
We'll make sure we protect jobs, businesses, families, and the economy right across Ontario.
Ford also pledging to speed up approvals and invest in infrastructure, he says, to tap into Ontario's minerals in the Ring of Fire.
Did you know that there are 75,000 people using food banks in Scarborough right now?
Meantime, Marit Stiles says a vote for the NDP will bring some much-needed relief for families struggling to make ends meet. With just days to go before the big vote, these renters rallied in the street, urging all parties to better protect tenants.
Vote him out! Vote him out! Vote him out!
This group gathering hoping to push post-secondary education to the top of the agenda.
I'm actually really frustrated at how the government is treating colleges.
We've seen hundreds of layoffs across the 24 colleges, program closures, and we're here to say enough is enough. It is time to actually invest in post-secondary education.
It's not just colleges and universities who say they're struggling and want Ontario's party leaders to shore up support. Elementary and secondary educators say they too need funding to fix schools and address teacher shortages. Blaine Harrison has that part of the story.
I want to ask Doug Ford why, after everything our children went through, everything they went through in the difficult years around the pandemic, why you cut $1,500 per student from our education system and drove education workers and teachers out of our schools.
Well, first of all, that's an inaccurate statement.
Doug Ford's education record has been a point of attack for his opponents, with the NDP, Liberals, and Green Party all promising they would close that $1,500 education funding gap the PC leader disputes. Each major opposition party has made several education pledges, a contrast to the Tories.
The PC party does not have a plan for education. They have not rolled out an education platform, so we don't know where they're going, and that should be a concern for Ontarians.
On the very first day of his campaign for a bigger mandate, which he says is needed to protect the economy from American tariffs, Ford was asked about his plans for the next 4 years of education.
This government has put more into education than any government in the history of Ontario. Not to mention, we've hired over 6,000 more educators throughout the province. And we're going to continue investing in education. But do you know what? You can't invest in education, you can't invest in healthcare if your economy gets attacked. And that's why we have to protect the people.
An answer that wasn't satisfying to some.
So I think the parties, not the governing party, the other parties recognize that education is an integral part of Ontario and that it needs to be funded and that it hasn't been funded. And they're willing to say what they will do, yet Conservatives won't even answer questions about it.
And the education ideas from the opposition go beyond just increased funding.
I'm very proud of the fact that we are committing to a universal school food program so that our little ones can get food in their bellies.
We will be building 90 new schools to get our kids out of portables.
We would also commit to lowering class sizes and putting money into the repair backlog so we modernize our schools. Our children deserve it.
Education is central to the Green campaign because one of their key candidates and deputy leaders is elementary school teacher Matt Richter, who received 40% of the vote in 2022 before losing by about 2,000 votes to PC Graydon Smith.
In education, there's frustration of the small amount of resources going into the schools to deliver the learning outcomes they want for students.
Like the Greens, the Liberals and NDP are also pledging to clear the school repair backlog, a tough task with a price tag of $31.4 billion. While in government, the PC said it was on the school boards to do the work and say they gave them the money to do it. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario is electing its 44th government this Thursday. You can join us on election night for special coverage hosted by Dwight Drummond with the latest results and in-depth analysis. It all gets started at 8 p.m. wherever you watch or stream CBC News. A sunny day out there for anyone casting ballots in the Ontario election. Sophia, just a reminder, polls close at 8 p.m. tonight for this early voting. Sunny, but not as cold, but still kind of chilly out there today.
Careful driving around all those snowbanks still. Collective question, how's everybody doing with all the snow? Are we sick of it? Are we loving it? Lots of blind spots. The snowbanks will shrink over the next week, though. We're talking about a little bit of a melt in the long range, but for now, temperatures are closer to seasonal. We'll talk a little bit more about the early spring thaw into next week in the long range, but first, got a little bit more snow in the forecast. This is just rubbing salt in the wounds for any of you that have been sick of shoveling. This is a weak, disorganized system into the late overnight period, and then mainly a cloudy and calm day for Sunday. Come Monday, though, a more organized Clipper system coming in from the west. Look at this. That rain-snow line is to the north again. Will prompt some warm-up, but this will also prompt a few centimeters of snowfall for those of you on the Georgian shores into the nation's capital region. Could affect a little bit of your Monday morning and Monday afternoon commute. We will unpack these numbers more in the long range as well, but here's a spoiler. Some of you in some areas have upwards of a meter of snow on the ground, not even including the shoveled snow banks. This is just freshly fallen snow over the past couple weeks. This will be the big shift in the next couple days, is a change in wind direction. A southerly flow will mean an eventual warm-up. Watch the temperatures uptick above the freezing mark in the coming days. We'll talk more in the long range what this means as far as the melt and why you should clear off all of those storm sewer drains while you can, if you can access them, because there will be some pooling, ponding, and flooding on some of the unshoveled surfaces, and of course near some of those low-lying areas, Shannon.
A good reminder, though, we love the warm-up. We'll take that.
Yeah, it'll be nice after this cold period.
Okay, we'll talk to you a little later in the show. Thanks, Sophia.
Sounds good.
To a major developing story we're tracking closely, a statement from the Vatican says the condition of Pope Francis, diagnosed Wednesday with pneumonia, has worsened. The Vatican had already confirmed he would remain in hospital, probably for most of the coming week, but now it says he experienced a prolonged spell this morning resembling an asthma attack, and that low platelet counts have led to blood transfusions. The statement says the prognosis remains guarded. Megan Williams is in Rome, outside the hospital where the Pope is being treated.
Well, this bulletin, these are the daily health bulletins that the Vatican issues, that usually at the end of the day, and the one that it issued this evening is by far the most alarming. I mean, yesterday, the doctors that are treating Pope Francis came out here. There was a sort of a scrum, a small press conference at Gemelli Hospital, and they said that the Pope was not about to die, but he was also not out of danger. And boy, was that made clear this evening. As you mentioned, he had this morning a respiratory crisis, an asthma-like respiratory crisis that was very long, that required a high flow of oxygen. He also had blood tests that revealed he has something called thrombocytopenia, which makes it harder for the blood to clot and makes the chance of, increases bleeding. As you mentioned, he's had a blood transfusion today. All of these things are really, really dangerous for an 88-year-old who has not quite two lungs. I mean, he had part of one lung removed when he was in his early 20s. Now, the Vatican says that he's sitting up, he's alert, But the doctors yesterday said that really the biggest danger facing someone in Pope Francis's situation, an older man who has a chronic lung infection, is sepsis. So that is that the double pneumonia, the infection that he has from double pneumonia, that infection in his lungs, that if that gets into his bloodstream and travels to his heart or to his liver, that is very, very dangerous. Now, they haven't said that, but clearly the situation today got a lot worse. As you mentioned, there are people gathering here at the hospital. I think people are on high alert, and of course, praying that the Pope gets through this, but this is the most critical condition the Pope has been in so far.
That's Megan Williams in Rome. Well, turning to a police investigation now in Markham, a woman is dead after being struck by her own vehicle. It happened in this condo parking garage. York Regional Police say the call came in about 7 last night for someone pinned under a car. Police say at this point it's not suspicious, but they're still working to figure out how something like this could have happened. We're learning more details tonight about a lawsuit filed in that Delta plane crash at Pearson Airport. Nicole Williams takes us through what we know.
Passengers on board Delta Flight 4819 say the airline needs to pay.
Oh, no.
A crash landing that saw the plane catch fire and flip upside down with 80 people on board. 2 lawsuits have now emerged out of the U.S. states of Minnesota and Georgia. One passenger alleging the crash was caused by gross negligence and recklessness of the plane's crew, who were inadequately trained and supervised.
If you watch that landing, that's not a normal landing profile.
Another passenger describes becoming drenched with jet fuel in a burning plane. He's seeking damages of more than $200,000, each lawsuit claiming injuries and emotional distress.
But imagine being through something like that where you crash. It's just, it's been very traumatic for me.
None of the allegations proven in court. Investigators still looking into the cause of the crash. The ripple effect of what happened Monday being felt by more than just those on board. The crash closed 2 of Pearson's busiest runways, and airlines were already trying to play catch up after 2 winter storms recently canceled hundreds of flights.
We are unfortunately canceling all Sunwing outbound flights this afternoon.
Dozens of Sunwing flights out of Toronto and Montreal canceled this week. The airline announcing it needed to prioritize getting stranded passengers abroad home.
Up to this point, they don't know we're gone.
Eli Nafik says he has yet to hear from Sunwing. He was part of a group of 37 from Waterloo, Ontario that became stranded in the Dominican Republic since Monday. Nafik, fed up waiting for Sunwing, paid out of pocket for an alternate flight out.
Every day is Groundhog Day.
This man and his wife opting to wait for the airline to bring them home.
We wake up, we're told to check out of our hotel and then possibly go to the airport, but then there's no flight, so then we have to go back to the hotel.
CBC reached out to Sunwing to see how many people it managed to bring home and how many people are still left stranded abroad. We did not receive a response by deadline. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
Toronto FC back in action tonight, kickstarting their 2025 MLS season in Washington. The team heads into the year with a familiar face at the helm, Robin Fraser. Now, he's their former assistant coach from a few years ago, now brought back as head coach. No injuries heading into the game, but there is still some tension in the air with an uncertain future for the team's highest paid player, Lorenzo Insigne. Despite having just 2 years left on his contract, TFC is looking to part ways. Club leaders say the team has entered a rebuild phase and everything is on the table after they missed out on playoffs for the 4th season in a row. And earlier today, the Toronto Blue Jays kicked off their first spring training game and beat the New York Yankees 6-4. Fans hoping for a fresh start after the team finished last in their division in the previous season. To bolster the team, the Jays also acquired star players like 2-time World Series champion Max Scherzer and veteran slugger Anthony Santander. Despite the good news, the team still has some question marks in the air. You know, the biggest one, of course, being the future of Jays superstar Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He is set to test free agency at the end of the season. The team failed to reach a deal on an extension by the player's self-imposed deadline. That was Monday. Club leaders say the door remains open. We're heading into a quick break now. We're back with you in 3 minutes. Hamas has released 6 more Israeli hostages, the last to be freed under the initial phase of the ceasefire. Once again, Hamas making the controversial move of marching them to podiums. Israel was to release 600 jailed Palestinians in return, but that's been delayed without explanation, leaving families waiting several hours. New exchanges will depend on the ceasefire's second phase. That's still being negotiated. Although more deceased will be returned to Israel this week, 63 Israeli hostages remain. More than half are feared dead. President Donald Trump has fired the top U.S. general along with other senior military, a move that flies in the face of convention as the Trump administration appears to be aligning U.S. military leadership with its own values. Cameron McIntosh is in Washington.
I have not seen any.
The top U.S. general, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles Q. Brown, out of his job, fired over social media. President Donald Trump posting on his Truth Social platform, thanking Brown for his service, calling him an outstanding leader and gentleman. Trump had previously criticized Brown for being too focused on diversity and inclusion. Today, speaking at the Conservative Political Action Conference, Trump called for a different military.
To end the woke insanity and rebuild our military.
The move defies convention. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs usually remains in place when administrations change to avoid politicizing the military. Trump also announced he's appointing a new chairman, Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Kane, Trump using his nickname Raisin, as in Raisin Kane, crediting Kane with being instrumental in the defeat of ISIS during Trump's first term. Trump also fired the head of the Navy, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to serve on the Joint Chiefs, and General James Slife, Vice Chief of the Air Force, along with the Judge Advocates General of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The move comes as the Pentagon is being told to fire up to 8% of its 900,000 civilian employees. The first 5,400 could go as early as next week. Republicans insisting a bloated bureaucracy is compromising the military's ability to fight.
We're running a $1.8 trillion a year deficit, and this is the single greatest threat to our national security.
To find the savings, the Secretary of Defense has said he'll target programs focusing on climate and diversity.
I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is our diversity is our strength. I think our strength is our unity.
His first month in office already full of rapid change, President Trump now putting his mark on the leadership of the strongest military in the world. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Washington.
Months of uncertainty could follow tomorrow's election in Germany with no majority likely. The country's chancellor boldly predicting victory today, but polls place his center-left Social Democrats third. Observers expect they'll wind up joining a coalition headed by the Conservatives, though that party's rightward shifts on immigration and taxes could complicate things. The controversial AfD, target of widespread protests, stands second. Critics accuse it of far-right extremism. Mainstream parties vow they'll exclude it from any coalition. We're heading into another break. Stay with us. It's Black History Month, and the woman behind the movement in Canada, Jean Augustine, is shining a light on young Black women in the GTA.
As we raise funds, we say to the donors, this is what you're supporting. Here are the girls. Listen and hear them so that you know what you are, where the funds that you bought through the tickets and through the support to the center goes.
The former Etobicoke Lakeshore MP started a charity more than 10 years ago, helping thousands of young girls through educational programs. There were live performances at today's annual fundraiser and Black-owned business owners showcasing their products.
This is Afra Toronto. It's modern African fashion, and I'm actually a certified designer, creative director. So I was inspired by my father and my cousin, and to just basically normalize Afra wear, I call it.
And Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow was there if you didn't catch her in the crowd. That's because after listening to the live performances, she went over to do a little shopping at the pop-up market. Sophia's here talking a little everything, right? A little more snow, a bit of a warm-up, a bit of a melt.
Yeah, it's gonna feel like early spring for a few days this upcoming work week, a little bit of a melt. A little bit of everything is a great way to describe it. A little bit of everything happening right now. Our temperatures are a couple of degrees below the freezing mark, but look at this southerly flow that will be with us really for the next 4 to 7 days. It is going to boost up our temperatures. Doesn't this look lovely after the thaw that we've had recently? But with those giant snowbanks, we are definitely going to see some melt. We could have some standing water, some pooling, ponding, some localized flooding in lying areas, especially if you've got a covered up storm sewer drain that you haven't been able to shovel out. Could have some melting on some of the roads that haven't been properly shoveled. Roads could be a little bit slick as well. Now you will still have snow on the ground at the end of this upcoming long range forecast, but our current snowpack may go down by about 10 to 15 centimeters. And for some of you, that's really only a drop in the bucket when it comes to some really impressive current snow on the ground numbers. These were taken from this morning from different METARs. We have measuring snow all around the province. Some areas have upwards of 1 meter of snow on the ground. This is not including the massive snow packs and all the shoveled snow on top of that. Look at that, 67 centimeters in King City. That's encroaching on the GTA. 88 centimeters of just clean snow in places like Ottawa and the nation's capital region. And for some of you, including in the Nickel Belt on the Georgian shores and in the nation's capital, another 5 to 10, even upwards of 15 coming in through Monday with this next Clipper system. This is only going to be a couple centimeters for those of you in the GTA and in parts of southwestern Ontario. But man, what a snowpack. If you look at the season of current snowfall so far, this is comparable to some early seasons at the ski resorts in some places like the Rockies and in Whistler. In some areas, we'll go through the stats more tomorrow, Shannon, but some areas in the snow belts have had dozens of days of fairly major snow events. So lots of snow info and data to break down for a really exciting snow season.
Yeah, absolutely. The kids love it, and you hear people talking about it's like an old school winter, you know?
Yeah,
we were kids with all the snow.
Yeah, this one will go down in the memory banks for sure.
Yeah,
snow banks, memory banks.
Hey, like what you did there. Thanks so much, Sophia. That's it for us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.